Hey guys, hope everybody's doing well, having a good 2026 so far. I've been meaning to make this video for a while and just finally got around to it. I wanted to make a follow-up video to the first one that I made on my Vengeance Paladin for Season 12 of Project Diablo 2. The first video was in the first week of the season. Now we're quite a long ways past that. A lot of people have stopped now for the season. And I have too, and that's why it's taken me some time to get around to this. But I wanted to show you what my final build looks like on the Vengeance Paladin that I had used to kill Lucion in the first week and also to map, and just kind of show you what the gear looks like, how things have changed, what the gear looks like for mapping, what the gear looks like for killing Lucion at this point, and do a little demo of both things. So just as a quick disclaimer, when I show you this build, I'm not a min-maxer, I'm not an expert on this build or any build. When I play this game at the start of a season, I tend to be impatient and inefficient. I blow currency as soon as I get it on incremental upgrades, and then I don't sell the previous versions of the gear. But I do a lot of research. I go in with a plan, and I think a lot about what I'm doing. So, I'm a pretty casual player, so take some things that I say with a grain of salt. Consult with the experts in the Discord if you're unsure of things that I say. But I have listened to a lot of the people in the Discord, and I can talk a little bit about that as the build has developed. So yeah, I'll show you my endgame setups. I'll review the build, the gear swaps, the mercenary, do the Lucian fight, do a little cow map demo real quick. And yeah, so the Vengeance Paladin, a fantastic build that I really enjoyed this season. Like I said in the other video, I started the season with this character and this build. So, 0 to hero, started Vengeance, played through the campaign as Vengeance, played the LOD content, got into mapping, right? Took this all the way through from beginning to end. I think it's a fantastic leveling build, right? You start out as Holy Fire, and then you transition into Vengeance once it becomes available. And you can start using it right away. There's no need to wait. Just you go into Vengeance and get your Holy Shield, right? Max your Conviction. You want to max Conviction and Vengeance at the same time early on, right? And then you can go into your primary element that you're going to use as your synergy for Vengeance, right? And so I went with Holy Shock as my primary one, and then Holy Fire is kind of my secondary one. So this is at the end of the day, this is a lightning focused Vengeance build, right? You can build Vengeance as lightning focused, as fire focused, as cold focused. You can go the famine route and kind of do all three. But lightning is sort of what I wound up going with and have enjoyed the most. So just quickly, what makes the Vengeance Paladin good for leveling? What makes it good for mapping? What makes it good for killing Lucion? So probably the primary thing is the fact that because Vengeance is a skill that adds elemental damage from cold, fire, and lightning to your attacks, it makes you able to farm anywhere you want. Early in the game, in the LOD content, it makes it easy to get through the campaign. It makes it easy to get into kind of whatever maps you want early on, because you've got Conviction, lowering enemy resistances by a tremendous amount, and then you've got all that elemental damage being added to your attacks through Vengeance. The playstyle involves basically jousting from pack to pack, using Vengeance, jousting, Vengeance, jousting, Vengeance, right? You can also do some charging between packs if Joust is on cooldown. But Vengeance is an attack that causes a chance to chain the elemental damage, and so that chain will cause lots of explosions on the screen, right, of enemies going down very quickly. So you kind of joust into a pack, hit Vengeance a few times, everything goes down, joust into the next one, and so on and so on. So it's got great AoE damage in that regard. And it's also fine for killing map bosses and stuff too. They go down pretty easily with Vengeance. As far as what makes it, what I would consider to be an S tier Lucian build specifically, right? This isn't the case for Rathma or Declone. That's a sort of a different story. The reason that Vengeance is so good is it has solid single target damage, but the chaining from Vengeance just annihilates Lucion's adds, right? So you'll see in the demo, but most of you probably know at this point, right? Lucian spawns these portals, and tons of mobs just pour out of these portals. He disappears from the screen and opens the portals. You have to kill the portals as fast as you can before you kind of get overwhelmed by adds. And Vengeance just absolutely destroys the groups of mobs that come out of those portals with the chain, right? And then even when Lucian reappears, I was doing this in the previous video, you can just attack him and the chain will damage the enemies around him and it will damage him as well, right? Even if you're hitting mobs, adds that are nearby him, he's going to get damaged by the Vengeance chains too. So it just has a tremendous amount of damage that works really, really well in the context of that fight. And the fact that you only need 90 lightning resistance, and you can see I have 90 lightning resistance. You need to have this for tier 2, but I'm talking about tier 2 Lucian, the hardest difficulty. You need the 90 lightning resistance. The other resistances literally do not matter, as you can see here, right? They're terrible. They're up higher from mapping. And then you want to have your physical damage reduction, your PDR up here. You want to have that as close to 50% as possible. But I have it over 50% at this point. But early on I had 46, 47, 48%, and you can get by with that. Those last few percentage points actually do matter a fair bit. So getting it as close as you can is ideal. But all you really need for the Lucian fight, and this isn't just on Vengeance, but really on any build, is you need the 90 lightning resistance, and you need the PDR close to 50%. Right? There's wiggle room on this for ranged characters to some degree, and you can do it with way less than this if you're doing T0. You can do. I've seen people doing it with 20% PDR, with 80 lightning resistance. Right? It's possible. And at this point, like I said, this character is kind of maxed out. Right? The first video was about showing how you can do it really early on with kind of bare minimum, and this is a kind of very much an endgame showcase. So we'll just go over the build really quickly. I kind of talked about it. Right, your primary things you're doing is maxing Vengeance and maxing Conviction. Right after that, you want to make sure you've got your point in Charge, you've got your point in Holy Shield, and then you want to put points into Joust. Right, they made a change this season where Joust would have its cooldown lowered by soft points, which is new. It used to be only hard points would lower that cooldown. The lowest the cooldown gets is 1.5 seconds unless you're using something like Alma Negra, which will lower it by another half second. Some people do choose to use Alma Negra on a Vengeance Paladin for mapping, and we can talk briefly about that. So after you do that, you're going to max out your synergies for Vengeance. The 3 synergies are Holy Fire, Holy Freeze, Holy Shock. Like I said, I chose Holy Shock and kind of went all in on the lightning damage on this, but you don't have to go that route. There's other ways you can do it, focusing on the other elements or mixing them. But the Holy Shock, the lightning focus is very, very strong, particularly because of Lightsaber as a weapon, which is what I went with here. Beyond that, you don't need anything else, right? That's basically it. You max Vengeance, you max Conviction, and then you go for your primary element, and then you can go for your secondary element, and you want to get Joust to a place where you're comfortable for mapping. Right, the current setup I have on, which I'll show you in a second, is the Lucian setup, so things are going to look a little different for mapping. And I'll get into the specifics and the sort of little debates there are about levels for Joust, about combat skillers versus flat damage charms, right? We can talk about that when I get more specifically over into the mapping gear. But let's take a quick look at the gear here for the tier 2 Lucian killing. So Lightsaber, no matter what, this is the weapon that you want. If you're going to go with a lightning focused route, right? It's got 4 lightning facets in it. They're not perfect. They're -5 +4. You do not need perfect facets on this build. You don't need them end game. You don't need them early game, right? You just need facets. The facets are important because of the fact that they add flat lightning damage, not just the negative enemy res plus skill to lightning. The flat damage that they add is actually really important too. Each facet adds 1 to 74 lightning damage. You can see it here more clearly on the Kira's, because lightsaber natively has some lightning damage also on it. So the 4-socket lightsaber is crucial. It's definitely the BIS item for this build. It comes with the resist lightning aura, which is nice. Having the phase blade as your weapon means that you only need 35% off weapon increased attack speed to reach the max breakpoint, which you absolutely want the max breakpoint. Earlier on, if you're using like a Gimmer Shred or something, you're going to have a much harder time getting there, but you want to get it up as high as you can early on. As far as Lucion goes, this doesn't matter for mapping, but you can see on lightsaber at the bottom of the stats here, the lightning absorb, right? This has 9%, is very useful for Lucion because of all of his lightning damage. Some people like to use a wisp projector for the lightning absorb it has, right? It rolls 4 to 6. It's not necessary, I don't think, in any case, but especially not if you're using lightsaber. It's great for comfort. I actually do have matching facets in here and in some of my other gear, right? I didn't before, and I usually don't bother with that, but I had leftover currency, and so just sort of went for it. So lightsaber. Kira's is the go-to for the Vengeance Paladin no matter what. For Lucion here, I have a 6% max life slam with 2 sockets. One of those sockets has a lightning facet, and the other one has a 15% IAS jewel, right? That'll give me with my High Lords the 35%. I forget what else this jewel does. Besides the 15 IAS, I'm not sure. Something negligible. So it could be improved, obviously. High Lords, I think, is the go-to. I wound up with this 2 skill that I corrupted and desecrated. You don't need 2 skills, right, to function on this build. A lot of this will just be overkill at this point. 10% faster run is not an ideal. Is not ideal here as a desecration, but it's kind of whatever. It gets the job done. High Lords is fantastic on this build because of the increased attack speed, because of the plus skills, and also the 1 to 300 flat lightning damage is great, and obviously the lightning resistance is good too. Armor-wise, this is a big improvement over the original armor I used to kill Lucion, which was just a 2-socket shaft with perfect rubies in it. This is overkill. You don't need 3 jaws and a shaft top to do this fight by any means. But I had the currency. I think it's kind of badass. So it's an upped shaft with the higher defense, the 3 jaws, 15% increased maximum life, the 27% PDR. Really nice armor, but I've been doing this I've been killing Lucion as a service, so it's just nice to have like a really comfortable setup at this point that just allows me to not even really have to think too hard at all about killing him with the high life pool. So you don't need this much life. You could have rubies in here, you could have facets in here if you just want to kill him faster, right? And you'll get along just fine. Dracs are the go-to for this build. For mapping, that 10 life after kill, the bottom stat, is crucial. You don't leech enough with Vengeance. You're doing a little bit of physical damage, but you're not leeching enough. You need life after kill on this build, right? And the strength is good to get your gear on. I have a 30 life slam here, right? Originally my Drax had no slam when I did this, and the ideal here is probably 10% IAS slam Drax and 10% IAS slam on the T-Gods, right? That gives you the extra IAS you need off the lightsaber to hit the breakpoint. But, it just, like I said, it got too hard to find, and I just didn't bother with the min-maxing there. Stone of Jordan, this is the go-to ring for this build. All skills, 1 to 120, the flat lightning, right, is huge. This one I have is a PDR slam, right? It gets me over the 50%. And the other one's a Magic Find Slam. I was originally just using 2 Magic Find Slams for mapping before this, but bought the PDR. The belt, this is the go-to for Lucion, absolutely. The only stat that really matters is at the bottom, 8% maximum lightning resistance, right? This is going to get you up to that 90% that you want. The belt also does roll a range of flat lightning damage, right? So I have 1 to 244. The higher the better for that. The slam is a throwaway. Attack rating is meaningless on a Vengeance Paladin because you're running Conviction, which lowers enemy defense, and so you're gonna hit everything regardless. The boots here, Merman's, my favorite for this build, very common. 60% faster run is great. You move around really quickly. You got 40 to 80 flat cold damage here, right, which adds to your, gets tacked onto your Vengeance damage. These I slammed myself way early on in the season for the 3% maximum lightning res. That gets me to the 90 that I need for Lucian, along with this shield. So Dragon Scale, this is the shield you want for Lucian. It's got at the bottom, it's got the PDR, right? So the PDR from this plus shaft plus that Soj gives me, over 50%. I was originally using a shield, a Dragon Scale that was, the corruption was 4% maximum lightning resistance. And then this one, I bought this 4% maximum life and stuck the low and then a facet into it, right? Not necessary, it's overkill. But once you have the currency, you're just kind of messing around, why not? I mentioned briefly before, Kira's right, 6% maximum life slam. You got your minus, it rolls with minus enemy resistances to lightning, fire, and cold, right, which helps your vengeance, right? And then I told you I stuck the facet into it. Kira's is where I get my Cannot Be Frozen from mapping. You do not need Cannot Be Frozen to fight Lucian on any level. Not necessary. Yeah. So on swap, I got really lucky this season and rolled a +6 battle order CTA on my first go. Usually I roll terrible CTAs all season. And then I bought a 3 skills Alma Negra. These are really cheap. This is really nice on a Paladin because the 3 all skills with if it boxes for 2, you're going to pay a fair bit for this, but if it boxes for 1, it's almost considered like a sort of bricked item at that point. I bought this for maybe a Vex rune a few weeks ago, so this is just great for buffing. You can see that I could use a respec on this build. Like I don't have the strength required for the shaft once I swap weapons. Dragon Scale gives you a bunch of strength, but it, like I said, I'm just lazy at this point, and it doesn't matter to me enough to worry about it. So for fighting Lucian, charm-wise, right, I've got a bunch of flat lightning damage charms with life. Some are just flat lightning, but like these charms, this was pretty expensive, right? It's getting close to being what's perfect. Not necessary. You can get these for much cheaper with less lightning damage, less life, no life, right? This is getting me to my faster hit recovery breakpoint. Some of them are resistance charms just because I don't want to swap all my charms out from mapping. These get the job done. This charm I just love and had to use, right? I traded for this, but it just all that flat lightning and then the life, which is really nice. Same kind of thing going on here. Some of these are self-found. I've had them for a long time. So I've got some lightning damage and life coming off of these, and then the rest of these are just combat skillers, giving me the FHR that I need, and then combat skillers with some lightning damage here, and then with life. And I'll talk about the combat skillers and why I choose to use them for Lucian and for mapping in a minute. One of the more expensive items I have at this point, this is usually the last thing I get in a season, is the 2 all skills Annie. paid like 13 for this, right? Absolutely not necessary for succeeding in this fight or in mapping, right? It's just a kind of, you know, at the very end. Nice to have. Torch, right? I bought this torch way early on. It gets the job done, right? It's real solid. I think that's it for the Lucion gear. Let's go ahead and fight Lucion now, and I'm gonna desecrate my buddy's Warcry amulet here that he has. You know, nothing insane, but you know, I've been desecrating a lot of ammies this season, so we'll lose our tomes here. So here we got, you know, our tier 2. Let's go ahead on over and do this fight. Just quickly, you know, you can see, like I said, the lightning resistance is at 90, the PDR is at 52%, elemental mastery 34, pierce 43. Just buff up here to show you the rest of the stats look like. Right, I got a lot of life at this point, you know, almost 2,800 life. It's way more than I had early on. Vengeance damage here is looking to be 17k max. Right, got high defense. Obviously you want max block on this character in all cases. And the build is simple too, right? You know, it's a classic strength for gear, dex for gear, plus maintaining enough to have max block as you level up, and then dumping into vitality. Right, and I'm level 98 at this point. You know, when I killed Lucian for the first time, I was like 89, so my life is higher. Let's just go ahead and demo this fight. I'm just going to go ahead and eat the lightning there, because it doesn't matter anymore with all the absorb and the life. So we're going to go to the portals, try to get as many of the portals down as possible, hop back onto Lucian, eat the lightning damage again, almost died there. But, you know, I don't recommend fighting him like that early on, obviously. You should actually go to the edge of the arena and avoid those novas. It's very easy to do. So we're just kind of going to do it again here. Back to the portals. See, my damage is jumping up pretty high here on the chains. 600 something thousand, right? So there we go, right? That's not how I recommend fighting him. That's how I fight him now, because I have the life, I have the PDR, I have the absorb, I know the fight, right? Kill them 55 times on tier 2. Just pop our chests quick here. Anything of interest happens. I've got my loot filter all the way down because I was playing another character in normal. I generally just play one character per season, beginning to end. And that's why I've invested so much currency into this character. We can talk about that briefly too. So, nothing great here. Let's go ahead and desecrate this amulet. See what we come up with. And we got a brick. Okay. It happens very frequently.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so we'll look at this other stuff later. So, okay, that's the Lucian fight. Like I said, if you want to fight Lucian the correct way, what you do is you joust onto him, you attack him, he jumps into the center of the arena, he casts that Nova. The Nova is highly telegraphed, and there's safe zones that'll appear where the Nova is not. You just want to stand in those until he's done, then you can joust back onto him. He disappears, the portals come out, monsters pour out of the portals, you kill the portals as quickly as you can. he reappears, you hop back onto him, you attack him. That's the fight until you're done. Right? I sort of intentionally played that very sloppily just to show you how quickly this can be done on this character at this point. But yeah, like I said, I've been doing the service. It's just easy to kind of kill him like that really, really quickly and not even bother worrying about the mechanics at this point. So let's take a look. I'm going to drop all this stuff. Here's my other gear. And I'll just show you what the swaps look like. Right, I have a 4-isted lightsaber that I was using for mapping sometimes because the damage is so high. I've got a Geats, right, which I don't really run anymore anyway. Let's just switch over. So I run, and I'll say this now, I run full combat skillers on this build. Just going to sub this stuff out. I've got a full set of combat skillers. These charms that I'm subbing in are just resistance charms because the way I've chosen to run this character, I have horrible resistances. Sort of a personal preference. So you'll hear some debate about when you run this character, how many combat skillers you want, or if you want them at all, and how many flat lightning damage charms you want. Flat lightning damage and flat elemental damage just scales really, really well with Vengeance, so it will pump your damage up real high. My max added lightning damage on this is... I just switched it out. It's up to 3,500-ish. 3,527 down here is what it looks like with the charms on. But yeah, so I've chosen to go, and this was through some conversations on Discord that I had with people, to go with the full skillers and, some flat lightning off the small charms, because the chance to chain Vengeance is super, super important. It's only 88 for fighting Lucion. It's higher on my mapping setup, which I'll get to in a second. But that chain chance is what's going to cause the screen to blow up. Right? The more chains you get, the more groups of monsters are hit by Vengeance, and the more damage you do faster. Right? You can increase your damage a lot with flat damage charms, but you're going to do that at the expense of your chain chance. So it's a comfort thing. It's to some extent like a personal choice. You can decide, you can play around, right? How much of a chain chance feels good to you. Some people just like to stack their damage and make it, the sheet look as high as possible. I totally get that. But I played with this for a while, and it just kind of wound up being the case that with the full complement of skillers, I was doing so much damage endgame that I liked having that. And I also really liked having Joust at the max cooldown rate of 1.5 seconds for comfort. Again, that's a personal thing. If you don't care about having Joust at the lowest cooldown, right, by all means, you don't have to. So let's look at the swap, though, right? So for the swap, like I said, my strength is messed up. Let's swap out the gear here. And then I'll just quickly go through what this gear looks like. For mapping. So this is the mapping setup. The lightsaber stays the same. I've got a 3-socket Cuirass here that has, this has an IAS mana per kill jewel in it. You need mana per kill on this character for mapping. Again, right, for sustain, you cannot leech enough to have your mana up. I found that the entire season, 3 mana per kill, 3 mana after each kill was more than enough for me for mapping. I had the 10 life coming from Drax. It was 8, it was 9 early on worse pairs. And then the 3 mana per kill was just enough. It didn't need to be more than that to sustain myself. So this has the... it has that, the 15%, and the 3 mana after kill. Then it's got other jewels in it. I think one of them, it's not a facet. Oh, the resistance jewels. My resistances on this character are terrible, and I'll show you in a second, right? So One of these is like, it's two 15 all res jewels are the other ones in here. There's a 15 all res with flat fire damage. You'll see the 22 to 48 fire damage there. And then a 15 all res throwaway, 8 max damage, I think is the other one. You can play around with this. A lot of people will have facets in their Kiras and have resistances coming from somewhere else. I like the way this looks, though, with the matching facets. I don't like having ums in my gear if possible. I just don't like the way it looks. So yeah, that's what I have on my Kiras. You can do it differently if you'd like. I wound up going with Arcanes. This was at the suggestion at first of a commenter on the first video. Arcanes is really nice for the 2 to all skills, adds to your Vengeance chain, adds to all of your skills, your Joust. It gives you that huge faster hit recovery, which brings me up to the 86 breakpoint for faster hit recovery. You don't need that, but it's nice. And also the huge vitality based on character level, right? 1 per character level. 98 vitality is just massive. Physical damage reduced by 10, that's not a bad thing. This has 3 facets in it also. This was expensive. This was like 10 or 11 high runes, this armor. Don't need to have 3 sockets. Could be 2, could be cheaper facets, right? Whatever, you'll be fine either way. This is what I wound up with. A lot of people do not use Dragon Scale for mapping on this character, and I get it. I just really like it because I like all the damage it gives you from the flat fire. I like having the high PDR on it, right? Having some PDR coming from here, just so you can just joust into the middle of anything you want, and pretty much ensure that you're going to stay alive. This has 3 facets in it. They're not perfect facets, but they're matching, which I guess I don't usually do. But this is a great shield. The strength, it's got max fire res. The 20% of fire skill damage, right, also adds to your elemental damage as well. So you can go Alma Negra here. You can go Haas, Herald of Zakarum here, depending on whether you want more plus skills from Haas, whether you want more cooldown on your Joust from Alma Negra, right? Alma Negra also has plus 2 skills. Your best slams on those are going to generally be sockets, right? So 3 sockets for facets in either of them. A plus 1 skill slam boxed for 2 sockets is also going to be nice. But there's a lot of flexibility here, right? You don't need all of this. Same High Lords for the Lucion fight, 2 skills. The Drax and the Mermans here have fire res on them just because I struggled with you'll see like my resistances here, they're fine, right? I managed to get cold up with some charms, right? So it's just the way that I wound up doing it. Like I said, this should probably be 10 IAS, 10 IAS, and then getting your res somewhere else. Or on charms or something. But this is just the way that I sort of wound up playing it in the end. So I swapped these out from Lucian, right? Doesn't matter, but this is 13% fire res, same ring. The T-Gods is just one with cold resistance because I also was lacking cold resistance on this build, the way I have it set up. And then the Mermans is also fire resistance, right? These are not ideal slams, but they get the job done for the way that I have this set up, and I'm pretty happy with it. Just to show you, so if I buff myself up here, the damage here is up to 19k for the mapping setup, and Vengeance is at level 40 with a 94% chance to chain. Right, so you're getting a chain almost every single time, and this is, this was the choice of mine with the plus skills. Right, I was running a shaft stop originally. Arcanes is just much better later on, right? With the plus skills and the other stats on it, rather than the PDR. So, just real quick, also let me resurrect the Mercenary, who's almost always dead these days since I'm just killing Lucian all the time. The Mercenary, there are a bunch of choices for this also, personal preference at a certain point. Some people will go with Act 1 with a Pus Spitter, for lower res procs. Some people will go with Act 5 with that. I can't remember the name of the rune word now. It goes in mauls, the Act 5 Mercenary. It's a maul that has chance to cast lower resist as well. So you can, go with your Act 5 Mercenary. I like Stormspire. Stormspire does the static field on striking. Put Innocence on this Mercenary. The Blade Shield procs that static field constantly. Static field lowers enemy health, and it also lowers enemy lightning resistance. So this is super helpful on a lightning-focused Vengeance build. 5 sockets in your Stormspire plus 20% IAS on your gloves will get your Mercenary to his highest increased attack speed breakpoint. Because of having Innocence and the proc on hit, it doesn't even really matter, but if you want him to be attacking fast, which you generally do, this will get you there. Lava Gout, largely here for the 20% IAS for him. The enchant on striking doesn't really do much for me. I have him wearing a Flickering Flame, the Resist Fire Aura, and I re-rolled this a few times trying to get a higher Res Fire Aura. The Res Fire Aura does synergize a bit with the fire damage coming on the Vengeance build. It's negligible. But given my choices with this build and my sort of poor resistances otherwise, the nice thing about this is it gives me the Resist Fire Aura also, so it overcaps my fire resistance. Belt, some standard PDR, right? You want to get some PDR on the Mercenary. Insane amount of defense coming off of Innocence here, right? So, he doesn't really get hit all that often. He doesn't die really ever. But 10% PDR is not nothing. 20% reduced curse, and also you got 6% lifesteal here, which is nice for him to actually have some lifesteal. But everything dies so quickly now that it doesn't really matter. I put Mermans on him just so he moves really quickly. As we're mapping, a little bit of PDR in there for him too, right? Obviously, it's not helpful. So yeah, let's pull up. I'm not going to do a ton with this. I just rolled this cow map that has some real good density, just to kind of show you what with this endgame setup, it looks like with Vengeance. I actually have footage of a 220-something% density Throne of Insanity map that I ran, but I wound up dropping a bear rune in that map, having an XP event, and then dropping an Ohm rune, and I wound up just leaving the game after I dropped the bear rune to make sure I permed it. So that footage got kind of messed up and wasn't what I hoped it would be, but it was a quick Throne of Insanity to kind of show that. But just so you can see here what it looks like with cows, how fast they go down.
Impossible.
Oh, I gotta make a new game. So my life total here for mapping, still very, very high. Damage is at 19k, ludicrous amount of defense. This is with the Defiance aura coming off of our friend Naharis here. So really, really high. This, like I said, doesn't matter because of the minus enemy defense effect that Conviction has. Yeah, let's kill some cows. They try to group them up a bit here. So, they go down pretty effectively here. See, my average damage is high. And in group maps, this is a really fun build. You'll put out 250 to 350k damage in a 8-player tier 3 map with no problem with this build. It's really fun. Great frontline character. takes anything that gets dished at him. Yeah, it's a really great build. I highly recommend this, like I've said in the other video too. It's a lot of fun, it's very satisfying. You like melee, you like doing elemental damage as well, you like being able to play any map in the game, form any area in the game, kill Lucian, you know, pretty early on. This build at this point probably costs about 60 high runes is what I was calculating it at earlier. With what I have, probably about 70 if you include the Lucion Gear. This is extreme overkill. You could succeed really well on this build in tier 3s and stuff with probably a 10, maximum 20 high rune investment. The most expensive items I have on this character are the 2-skill Annie, which was like 13, the armor, which was like 10. Obviously, Innocence is not cheap for the Mercenary. Probably the best helmet for the Mercenary in this would be Ferocity, with the taunt procs also coming off Innocence. But it's also not really necessary, right, because the enemies die quickly enough at this point that you don't really need it. You can see the constant static procs, and again, I'm just kind of running around this map, right? I'm not trying to clear this efficiently. Just letting you see how it looks, the way it drops these packs. Yeah, I think that's it. I appreciate everybody's feedback on the first video. I was really glad it got a nice reaction. Helped some people out. Let's just see what this ring is real quick. I don't have a Scroll of Town portal, it's left in my stash, so we'll leave that as a mystery. Well, actually, let's see. Maybe we get real lucky.
How may I be of help?
Ravenfrost, okay. Alright, so anyway, yeah, this was long and rambling, guys, like the other one, I know. But I enjoyed making this. I'll probably do the same thing next season. I'm thinking about Fists of Fire, trying to get a quick early Lucian kill, trying to have the same gear, as few swaps as possible early on. But yeah, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments about this build, about, you know, Lucian in general. Just know that I'm not an expert, right? Just a passionate player and fan of the game. So yeah, thanks everybody. Take care.